The immigration and the police escort has gone home. What they've done, they've listened to my open remarks about what happened, and they've looked at 1,200 people and they've gone, nah. So we're all up. Hey, the revolution's here. I've got to whip through this afternoon pretty quick because I've got so much stuff to get in. And so I'm going to kind of move quickly over some things I usually dwell on a bit. What I was talking about this morning, obviously, was the way that these bloodlines keep turning up in the positions of power and how they come out of the ancient world, and they always seem to end up in the positions of power. But, you know, the human race is an amazing, glorious tapestry of physical form. It's one of the most wonderful things about being on the earth is that how different we all are. And so I think, from my own research anyway, that a lot of different otherworldly sources, if you like, have seeded different streams on the earth, and you know, that's one of the reasons we all look different all over the world. And one area that's come into my area of research in recent years, and many other people too, is actually the true nature of the history of Mars. It's amazing when you get into this just how much everyone is agreed on in relation to Mars. They agree that there was once a time when Mars had an atmosphere, water, rivers, etc., that could have been a home for life. They agree that somehow that planet's ability to be a home for life was devastated by some kind of fantastic cataclysm. The only question is, when did it take place? Conventional history and science says millions of years ago. More and more, however, independent researchers are saying, hey, maybe it was only thousands of years ago. And interestingly, the geological and biological record of the Earth proves beyond question that in a matter of thousands of years ago, there was a fantastic cataclysm on this planet, or affecting this planet, that almost destroyed its ability to be home for life, symbolized in the endless legends, again, which have made it into the Old Testament, of the great flood, the great cataclysm, the collapse of Atlantis, and all that stuff. Where it depends where you look and what your legend is, but the theme's the same. Massive cataclysms, Earth clinging onto life. And increasingly the research is suggesting that the cataclysm that did that to the Earth had the same source that did that to Mars. And if that's the case, then Mars, as a home for life, to the point where it was destroyed, does not go back that far. And maybe there are Earth races that come from there. And more people are starting to look at this, not least because of the stuff that's been found on Mars in a place called Cydonia. This guy called Richard Hoagland's written a lot about this, and many other people too. The so-called face on Mars. And I've just seen a very interesting movie. I've just seen it, Mission to Mars. Very nice movie, that. And again, it has the theme that somehow Earth was seeded from Mars, but it takes the time scale of millions and millions of years ago. My feeling, and I can't go into it now because there's so much to get through to focus more on what I'm talking about today, is there's a very good chance that what we call the white race, or at least part of it, actually came from Mars originally and settled in the Near and Middle East. And again, it's interesting when you look at Cydonia and the relationships between these various apparently non-natural structures, that their geometrical relationship to each other is very, very much in line with some of the ancient standing stones and circles and stuff like Avebury in Wiltshire, which, if you want to do more research on that, the evidence is there. In fact, this area where the pyramids are, Giza, the ancient Arabic word for this area, the Giza Plateau, actually was their word for Mars. And there's other names and attachments and connections to the Sphinx, which link that to the name for Mars and the symbolic name for Mars. So I think that the Martian story is actually one that in the next few years we're going to see more and more evidence coming to light about, which leads to the fact that actually Mars, as a dead planet, does not go back that far, and in fact we may have many, many connections with it. What is interesting is that out of that ancient Near and Middle Eastern area, which some researchers link to this Martian race, which they say is the white race, or at least one of them, is a group of people called the Phoenicians. Now, in conventional history, the Phoenicians, who again were a white race, some wonderful books showing that what is said about the Phoenicians in conventional history is actually not true. When you follow conventional history, it mentions the Phoenicians, but like a footnote. Oh yeah, they existed, but now let's get to the important things, all the Egyptians. But the Phoenicians are actually fundamental to understanding so much about the world. They were very, very powerful in this area of the world, in what we now call Turkey. They had a place called Cappadocia, was one of their centers, and all around this area, Tyre used to be a Phoenician center, and they were great mariners. And not only that, they went around in ships a lot, you know. And when you do the research, you find that from this Phoenician group and their travels around the world came so much to explain some of the mysteries. About 3000 BC, they went around Spain and into Britain. And they took with them from the near Middle East so many of the classic British, Irish, Welsh, Scottish symbols. All the classic symbols of the British Isles didn't start in the British Isles at all. They came from North Africa, and provably so. And when the Phoenicians went into Britain, it was they that opened up the first tin mines in Cornwall. And they used to bring the tin back to the Mediterranean. And these Phoenicians, who also moved across land, but particularly by sea, took very advanced knowledge with them. And within these bloodlines, it seems to me, within this Phoenician white race, were some of these key reptilian hybrid bloodlines also. Interestingly, when you look at the Phoenician legends and symbolism and religion, you're looking at what manifested as the British culture. One of the deities of the Phoenicians was called Barati, the female, and they had the male Barat. Now, because it was an offshoot of the same white race that went into the Indus Valley, taking the knowledge and the stories that eventually manifested as the Hindu culture, you find names in the Hindu culture very close to Bharat and Bharati, and when you go right across to Britain, you find the same. Bharat became Baritan, and Bharati became Baritannia. And this is a classic depiction of Bharati on an image of a Phoenician coin. That image will become very significant soon. And here is a British penny symbolizing Britannia. And the basic legends of the British had about Britannia were the same as the Phoenicians had about Bharati. They were the same person. Also, they had two other deities, interestingly, to mention, the Phoenicians. One was called St. George of Cappadocia, that place in what we now call Turkey. St. George of Cappadocia, who fought and defeated the dragon, another constant theme that emerges. And when St. George of Cappadocia went by ship with the Phoenicians, if you like, in their legends, when they got to Britain, of course, he became St. George of England, the patron saint of England, who defeated the dragon. The red cross on the white background that became the Templar symbol and is now the flag of England was the Phoenician symbol, the fire cross of the Phoenicians. And that other deity was St. Michael. St. Michael, which later became a Christian deity, actually was a Phoenician deity thousands of years before that. And when they went off to Britain and parked there, St. Michael started emerging all over the place. There's a place in Cornwall, where just down from where the tin mines are, which is an island just off the coast. It's called St. Michael's Mount, named after the fact that that deity with the Phoenicians, that's where they had a harbor bringing the tin out by ship down to the Mediterranean. People think that it all started in Britain. And if you look at it, this is important. It's not just historical naval contemplating, because what we call the British culture has, in so many different forms, become the world culture. And here is a depiction of a Phoenician high priestess. And what they used to use was the swastika. The swastika is an ancient esoteric symbol found all over the world. Now, what the Nazis did, people think, if you don't do the research, that they invented the swastika. No, no. What the Nazis did, and what all Satanists do, is they take an esoteric symbol and they turn it around to consciously indicate the negative. This is why the classic symbol of Satanism is the five-pointed star, reversed, so it's pointing down, not up. Reverse symbolism. You'll find this in the Illuminati all the time as they use this stuff. This is a Phoenician standing stone in Scotland. Again, the swastika, which the Nazis reversed to indicate the negative. Not surprising. Now, all over the west of England, in the chalk hillsides, are white horses, which conventional kind of history can't understand or explain where they came from. Well, this one is the oldest, and it's on a place called Uffington in the Valley of the White Horse, named after it, not really from Stonehenge, not too much of a drive. And conventional archaeology says this was created in 3000 BC or around then. That's just when the Phoenicians were arriving in Britain from the Middle East and the Near East with this advanced knowledge. Why would they put the Phoenicians, on the hillsides of Britain? Because the white horse was a symbol of the Phoenician religion. And so you look at the stone circles of Britain, and this one's Avebury, which is, again, even closer than Stonehenge to that white horse. The massive stone circle and lots of ancient earthworks which connect into it. It's like a circuit board. Here's the stone circle, and this is the biggest man-made or human-made mound in Europe, called Silbury Hill, just down from that circle that you saw. And there's many other earthworks, like, as I say, a circuit board. Now, again, who built these? Where did the knowledge come from? Well, the Phoenicians' arrival in Britain also corresponds with the window of time in which it suggested that these earthworks and these stone circles were created. This is Stonehenge. That's a crop pattern, 125 circles that appeared suddenly. And it's amazing how quick two blokes with a stick can work pushing. Isn't it? Isn't it amazing? Doug and Dave? It is amazing. It's amazing how quick. I mean, they must really move with them sticks. 125 circles. And that's the main road there, going from London to the west of England. Now, with the passage of the Phoenicians, there's a lot more to say about them, but I want to focus on the theme of the day. Came hidden knowledge. This is so important. That image that I showed earlier of the pyramid with ignorance in the main body among the masses of the people and knowledge held at the top is so important. I just want to go now through some of the knowledge that these advanced peoples, particularly these bloodlines, held in the ancient world, which allowed them to build these amazing structures, Stonehenge not least, and also the way that they have held it to the present day, and how they want us not to know about it. Again, there's that image. This is the idea. Create a structure. In the ancient world, it was mystery schools. Now it's the global secret society network. Keep the real knowledge here and them in ignorance of that possibility. And one of the great areas of knowledge is the fact that this planet is encircled and interpenetrated by a web of force lines, energy lines. Some people call them ley lines, other people call them meridian lines, the Chinese call them dragon lines. And where one or two of these force lines cross, you get a small vortex of energy, a very powerful point. Where lots of these vortexes cross, you get, or lots of these lines cross, you get a massive vortex of energy. Now, energy is neutral. It just is. You know, I mean, energy is just like energy. It's vibrating. And you want to say, what do you want me to do? I want you to be malevolent. All right, I'll vibrate to the malevolent vibration. You're a bastard. I hate you. You know. It's just energy. We impregnate energy with the vibration by our thoughts, and by ritual, of course, is the focus, very powerful focus of thought. Oh, no, I want you to be loving now. All right, then I love you. I'll just vibrate a bit quicker, you know. It's just energy. It's neutral. It's not good and a bad. So, you know, these energy sites are not like, it's the occult, it's the devil. It's just energy. It's how we use it. And it's interesting that at these major points where these energy lines cross, That's where these people with this ancient knowledge built the stone circles and these great earthworks. This is where Freemasons invariably stick their temples. This is where the ancient temples were put. This is where the pyramids were put, and a massive vortex point. They understand that. It's just energy. You can harness it for malevolent reasons. You can harness it for positive reasons. And interestingly, it would seem that the heart center of this energy grid, where more lines cross, the very heart center, is what we call the British Isles, which it seems is why all these ancient people headed there, and why the Illuminati have focused their whole operation out of there. And there are more stone circles, earthworks, and standing stones per square mile in Britain than anywhere else in the world. It's just extraordinary, because it is such a center of this energy. And they know that if you can harness and control the vibration of the energy grid by your action and by your ritual, you are vibrating the energy that we're all living in, because this is not empty space, it's vibrating energy, to the vibration that most suits your agenda. This is a key area of knowledge which we've been kept from, which has been used to control us. This is from a book, a very good book called Pie in the Sky, Pi Pi, which looks at the energy grid of Ireland and Britain. And again, talks about the fact that this is a massive center in the Earth's energy grid. Also, this is, it's not a very sharp picture, but this is from Chichen Itza in the Maya country, the pyramids on this side of the world, the American continent. When you start to research this and where the Phoenicians went with this knowledge, it's extraordinary. Phoenician artifacts have been found in the rainforest of Queensland. And again, a lot of people don't know this, that in the Grand Canyon, unmistakable Egyptian, including mummies, Egyptian Oriental artifacts have been found in caverns in the Grand Canyon, in areas, incidentally, which are still barred to the public. The Phoenician evidence can be found in New England. The idea that Columbus was the first person to get to this side of the world from the other side of the world is utterly ludicrous, and with it, they took this knowledge. So when the Europeans, the ones not in the know, came to the Americas, particularly South and Central America, they were staggered to see the same basic stories with different names, and the same basic cultures and artifacts and ways of doing things were found. It's because they weren't the first people to come from Europe. This knowledge went out a long, long time ago. Another area of knowledge is astrology. Astrology. I mean, what is it? It's bloody mad, it's the devil. Oh, we know it's still a stupid astrology. What is it? All astrology is the science of how the movement of the planets creates a vibrational expression which affects constantly the Earth's energy field. As we live in the Earth's energy field, as those planets move and combine, therefore change the energy field of the Earth, we are affected by it. When we are born, some people say when we are conceived, probably both are true, we take on an energy which reflects where we're born at the time we're born. And as we therefore, with that energy impregnation, go through our lives, we, born 29th of April 1952, are going to take on a different energy in that place at that time than someone born on January 16th, 1960. The point being that, therefore, as I go through my life, I am going to, with my energy, interact with the movement of the planets and their effect in a different way to someone born in a different place at a different time. It's just energy interacting. Now, they don't want us to know that, so they've demonized it. The Pope says it's evil. I love the Pope, don't you? I love the Pope. I love the Pope when he's going along on that Pope-mobile. Behind 3.5 inches of bulletproof plexiglass, you know. I love that. I mean, that's faith in bloody action, isn't it? Hey, isn't it? Anyway, now, while they're demonizing it and laughing at it, and of course when you read your bloody astrology in the bloody local paper, I mean, of course not everyone's going to act like that. It's too far out, too generalized. But I know from astrologers who are on retainers from transnational corporation CEOs. And I know from astrologers in Britain who I've talked to, who work with certain people that people would be shocked if they knew, politicians and business people, etc., that the Illuminati do not cough unless it is astrologically right, because they know there are certain energy cycles when what you want to achieve has a much better chance of happening than if you do it at this cycle. They don't hold summits, takeovers, or anything unless it's astrologically right. But that's another area of information they want that they don't want us to know. And this is a massively important area of the hidden knowledge that these bloodlines have kept from us through their secret society network, the power of the sun. The sun is 99% of the mass of the solar system, is the flipping solar system. When the sun changes, we change. It's pretty straightforward. And the Illuminati, illuminated ones, they use the sun symbolism constantly, as you'll see. They have known about the power of the sun. Again, it's two levels of knowledge, then as now. Back in the ancient world, of course, the mass of the people focused on the sun because it had an obvious effect on their daily lives, their crops, their ability to live, warmth, power, etc. But at that level, the Illuminati level, where they had access to knowledge these people did not have, they focused on the sun for a very different reason. They knew that the sun is more than a source of heat and power and light. It is a massive generator of energy which operates and projects its energy in predictable cycles. And at certain points, the energy coming from the sun, the so-called sunspots or solar activity, solar flares, are so powerful, they take out computer systems. They've done this. They've taken out power systems. And we're in the middle of a massive sun cycle at the moment, which hit its peak at the millennium. Now, what you're looking at is a sunspot. Some of these things, these arcs of energy from the sun, are 100,000 miles high, apparently. And a few years ago, or earlier in his life, there was a guy called Maurice Cottrell who did a lot of work because of his interest in sun cycles, working them out. He worked out small cycles, medium cycles, and great cycles of this sunspot activity. Later in his life, he came across the amazing information left us by the Maya people in Central America, where they left us a very different measurement of time and the passage of time. And they have small cycles, medium cycles, and great cycles. One of their great cycles apparently is due to end about 2012, not too long from now, when we start another cycle. And I think this is why so many things are happening now. This cycle of evolution is coming to an end, and all that's remained hidden is coming to the surface, which is why there's no way that this control is not coming down in our lifetimes. But what he found, to his amazement, is that his cycles of sunspot activity corresponded almost exactly, even over the thousands of year cycles, with the Maya measurement of time. In other words, so much of that Maya measurement of time was actually measuring sun cycle activity. And the Illuminati play these cycles absolutely to a T, because they know that all is energy, and if you know how to use energy, then you can achieve far more than if you don't. So this is why they time everything. People say, why don't they just take over? Because A, they can't. There has been a progression. And they play these cycles, and they play their cards and their major cards at specific times. No earlier, no later, then, because they surfboard the energy to give them the best chance of success. So in the ancient world, you had a focus on the sun at the Illuminati level, because they understood what it was and how it was affecting us minute by minute. And if you know how astrological and sun cycles are going to affect us and affect us emotionally, you know that you're going to have humanity in a certain emotional state as a result of the energy changes and cycles around them, that if you play that card now, you play your war there, you play your economic collapse there, people are more likely to react to that in the way you want. So in the ancient world, again in Egypt, the focus on the sun, and gold became the solar metal. Associated with the solar metal. This is Rome. And again, the lion became a symbol of the sun. This, it seems to me, is why the lion got this symbol of the royal animal, the king of the jungle, the king of the solar system. And again, you'll find on Illuminati heraldry and flags and stuff, the lion symbolizing the sun and the knowledge of the sun. This is Sri Lanka, again, gold, the sun. This is more recent. This is the sun chair of George Washington, the first president of the United States, inaugurated in 1789, a very, very high degree Freemason. Because the Freemasons, although most of them don't know it, is an organization through which this Illuminati work. It's an organization within an organization. Now, this symbol has become an Illuminati symbol. It's the sun coming over the horizon. And it symbolizes the ancient son of God of Egypt, Horus. The Egyptians used to symbolize the cycle of the sun through the day as Horus, the sun, born at dawn. And so the symbol of Horus is the sun coming up over the horizon, coming over in the east. And then at the end of the day, hence, by the way, we get horizon, that word. And then you follow the cycle to the end of the day. And they used to symbolize then, as the sun went down into the dark place, setting, they used to say that it was their symbol in ancient Egyptian myth of the negative force, the dark force, set. Hence we have sunset. So when the Illuminati use this symbol of the sun rising over the horizon, it is a symbol of the ancient son of God of Egypt, Horus, which these bloodlines certainly go back to. And the symbolism of this sun cult, this Illuminati, is all around us in terms of flags and what have you. This is the Tibetan flag. You have the sun rising over the horizon, over the pyramid, over the mountains, coming up in the east. And Tibet, I mean, the Nazis, who were kind of into this esoteric stuff in a very malevolent way, they were sending people off to Tibet to kind of find out more and more information about this stuff. Tibet seems to be a real depository of ancient knowledge, some of which is used positively, some of which is used very malevolently. This is the seal of Arizona. Again, the sun over the horizon. You know, if you just saw one, you'd say, oh, well, it's just the sun over the horizon. You know, it's sunny in Arizona. But this comes up so often, this sun over the horizon, as you'll see as this day unfolds. This is Illinois, where the sun doesn't come out quite so bloody much. Again, sun over the horizon. And this symbol relating to the sun is where we get so many stories that have manifested as what I call prison religions. I think religion is one of the greatest forms. No, I think religion is the greatest form of mind control ever invented. And when you do the research into it, you find some strange areas of where it's come from and how it's manifested in the modern world. In ancient times, they used to use, this is long before Christianity, they used to use this symbol, which is not negative in itself, it's just a symbol of the sun's journey through the year, or the Earth's relationship to the sun during the year, of course. They used to draw the circle. They used to put the signs of the zodiac around the outside. Zodiac comes from a Greek word meaning animal circle, appropriately. Then they used to break this circle up with a cross, creating the Four Seasons, who were a very good pop group in the 60s, as I recall. They had that Frankie Valli, who used to sing as if someone was squeezing something very hard. Do you remember him? Jerry. Anyone below my age is going, what's the prat talking about? Who's Frankie bloody Valli? But show my age. And then they used to put the sun on the cross in the center of the circle. I've heard that somewhere before. Come on. Now, at this point, the seasons break up with the winter solstice, December 21st, 22nd. At that point in the ancient world, long before Christianity, they used to say that symbolically the sun had died because it was at the lowest point of its power in its cycle, in the northern hemisphere anyway. 3 days later, on December the 25th, they said that the sun was born or born again because it had started its cycle back to the peak of its power in the summer. And so, deity after deity after deity, pre-Christianity, was given the birth date of December the 25th. If you want a son of God who died so our sins could be forgiven, born on December the 25th to a virgin mother, or even a virgin mother, then take your pick, because there's endless numbers of them. And when the sun reached this point, which we call Easter, it was a fixed point in the ancient world. The sun was symbolically entering the sign of the ram or the lamb. And at that point, they used to sacrifice lambs to the gods because they thought they would look kindly on them in their crops and stuff in the spring, what have you. And so you have the symbolism, thousands of years before Christianity, of the lamb who died so our sins could be forgiven. And what you've got is you've got religious texts, not least those in the Bible, Old and New, which are written in two ways with the same words. If you understand the knowledge, because you're initiated into it, you see the numerology, the codes, the symbolism in the text, and you read it in a certain way. If you are not in that knowledge, i.e. the masses over hundreds and hundreds of years, then you take the same texts literally, or you dismiss them. But for a long time, they've been taken literally. And so you have, in the same text, an ability to pass on advanced knowledge to initiates who understand the coding, and texts which you can turn into a prison religion by taking them literally. And I'll give you an example. Something I said? I'll give you an example. One of the ways that it symbolized the sun in the ancient world was as the cycle of a man's life through the year. On December the 25th, they symbolized the sun as a baby. He grew up, and at the peak of his power, the sun's power, at the summer solstice, they symbolized this man symbolizing the sun as a massively strong man at the peak of, course, the sun's power in the year, with long golden hair being symbolic of the big rays of the sun at that time of the year. Hence, of course, the lion, the mane of the lion, the long golden hair, the rays of the sun. When the sun came down in this cycle, symbolizes this man, down towards the fall into the house of Virgo the Virgin, the house of Delilah, they symbolize this man's sun as having his hair cut short because the rays of the sun he symbolized were getting less and less powerful. And by the time they got round here, they symbolized the sun as like old Father Time as we do today. Of course, what have I just said? I have just described the story of Samson. And again, we're taking literally across the great spectrum of life and belief, stories and texts that are symbolic. Now, this is not a negative symbol in itself, I say again, but because of what it symbolizes, it became part of the secret language of the Illuminati. And you'll see as the afternoon unfolds how their secret language is all around us, and when you start to see the symbolism, you start to read what you couldn't see before. So this became an Illuminati symbol. This is what the Celtic cross is, the cross and the circle. I took this in a graveyard in Ireland. There again, you've got even almost a symbol sun on there. That's what this is. NATO, as we get towards the latter part of the day, we can see is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Illuminati, which is being manipulated to become the world army, the world police force. They want a world army. They're moving there vastly quickly. And, of course, the horrors and suffering in places like Kosovo, Iraq, and Bosnia have massively advanced NATO's ability to be cast in the role of the world army. Again, the cross and the circle. And that's what this is. This is the CIA symbol. Again, the cross and the rays of the sun. These are classic Illuminati symbols which turn up in the positions of power. I took this image in the city of London, just across from St. Paul's Cathedral, in the heart center of the Illuminati manipulation of the planet. And there you see the same thing. You've got the sun, a black sun appropriately. That image on the face is supposed to be Winston Churchill. Again, very appropriately when you do the research. But again, round there you've got the zodiac circle, and this is on a financial building in the city of London. Now, even in the street plans of the major Illuminati cities, you see this same symbolism. which they understand and other people don't. This is the center of the street plan of an amazing city called Paris. It's the Arc de Triomphe. There's the circle. There are 12 streets going off, creating 12 segments. Again, you've got that same image of the circle, that symbolizing the sun, the arch, and the elements that you saw in that original symbol. Now, in Paris, they've even gone so far as putting the sun on the bloody street around it, look. When you start to realize how it's done and what they're doing, you start to see that life in a very different way. This is a way that they've put the cross and the circle, this symbol again, into Christian churches. Now, among the people who've been initiated into this knowledge over the centuries have been some of the most famous artists and writers. Mentioned that this morning. This is the famous picture by Leonardo da Vinci. Now, according to Holy Blood, Holy Grail, a very well circulated book in recent years, the elite secret society based in France, which is very much part of this bloodline orchestration and network, called the Priory of Sion. Sion, S-I-O-N. And when you look at the ancient Sanskrit word for the sun, which that white race took into the Indus Valley, which manifested as that culture, you find that Siona, S-I-O-N-A, just one letter difference, was the ancient Sanskrit word for the sun. For me, Priory of Sion is Priory of the sun, and it's massively connected, this secret society, to the Merovingian bloodline. And Leonardo da Vinci was a grand master, according to Holy Blood, Holy Grail, of the Priory of Sion. He was in the knowledge. And what he's done here, if you look at it, he has symbolized that very same recurring Illuminati symbol of the circle, the cross, and the sun on it in this picture. He's depicted Jesus as the sun. When you look into the ancient world, you find that the way they symbolized their sun gods was to put a halo around them, indicating they weren't literal people, they were symbolizing the sun. I'll give you an example of that in a second. And he's broken up the 12 disciples into 4 sets of 3. That's why that guy's looking the other way. And it's an interesting question. Did God create a law like eons ago that religious deities could only have 12 disciples or followers? Do you know? They're every bloody where. They've all got 12. I mean, is it in the contract or what? And you get King Arthur, the center, the sun, and the knights of the round table. The 12 knights of the round table. At the top of the SS, you had Heinrich Himmler, who was, he had this knights organization, and he was at the center of it, Himmler, and he had 12 knights around his round table. This constant recurrence of this same symbolism and this same knowledge and techniques. So that's what that was all about. And also, Leonardo da Vinci was another man, like Christopher Columbus and Nostradamus, who was employed by the de' Medici family and indeed funded and sponsored by the de' Medici family, a major Illuminati family from Venice, Italy. A lot of the so-called deities that supposed to have existed were symbolized with these classic sun symbol headgear and what have you around them. This is a Phoenician stone in Britain which symbolizes their sun god, Bel, which also manifested as Baal, but they called it Bel, B-E-L. And there's the halo they put around the head to indicate that it was symbolizing the sun, not a literal person. So out of this knowledge came, as I said earlier, prison religions that were created to imprison the mind. Instead of saying, well, I'll look at this religion, I'll look at that religion, I'll look at that religion, and what I think is right from all of them I'll take, and what I'm not sure about, you can keep that. I don't feel right to me. I'll come to my truth, thank you. Instead of that, you get an off-the-peg religion And you have to contract to all elements of it, no matter how nonsensical you may be, because if you don't, you're not a Christian, you're not a Jewish, you're not a Jew, you are not a Hindu, you are not a Muslim, because you don't contract to all these things. Don't think for your bloody self. You take what we say off the peg is the truth. So let's have a look where some of these things came from. That sums up religion for me. There's these two old, kind of, Stone Age people, and they've got these two pile of stones here, like, and he's saying to his mate, doesn't Throng look silly? He must know that our pile of rocks is the real God, And that's the way that we've gone. We have been focused away from the fact that we are multidimensional infinity, not only part of the great I, we are the great I, into thinking that we have to look up to some deity that's been created, and there's always a middleman in between us and the deity. Have you noticed that? What I call the religious Mr. 15%. I mean, is it really not possible to talk to the divine without going through a bloke in a long frock? I mean, is it possible or what? I don't know. Maybe it's me. And here's something else I find interesting, because I'm a strange man. You look at the origin of all the major prison religions, and where do they come from? The same area of the world. Judaism, Christianity, Islam come from there, of course, but so does Hinduism, which was taken into the Indus Valley, the stories that later became the Vedas, the religious books, etc., by, according to conventional history, a white race from the Caucasus Mountains that went in there. And as I said earlier, one of the focuses in the ancient world, the focus probably, of these particular bloodlines I'm talking about, was Babylon. And out of Babylon, funnily enough, just a coincidence, has come the blueprint for control by religion. In Babylon, they had, this is a Freemasonic symbol, but it symbolizes a lot of the Babylonian stuff. This manifested this image of the eagle looking both ways here as the Roman god Janus, of the face looking both ways. And one of the major mind control projects on the planet is the Janus Project, based at NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium. But in ancient Babylon, they had three deities in their trinity. That comes up again and again. One was Nimrod, the father, and then there was Tammuz or Ninus, the son, and they said that the father and son were one, and only through them could you get to heaven. And the female aspect of the Trinity was Queen Semiramis, who they symbolized as a dove. They symbolized Nimrod as a fish. And what they said about Tammuz Ninus, the son, was that he died to save humanity. It's thousands of years before Christianity. And when they killed him, they put him in a tomb, they rolled a rock across the front, and 3 days later, when they rolled it back, Tammuz had scarpered. I think I've heard that somewhere before. And what you get is this recurring theme and these recurring stories, which, as the passage of time goes, just get put in a different context, a different time frame, with different names. And we're supposed to take them all bloody literally. I mean, like, we take this guy literally. You see, when the Illuminati moved from their center in Babylon to Rome, not only did you get the Roman Empire, you got the Roman Church, which became the Christian Church. So we went from the place Babylon, where the blueprint of control by religion and the stories that so many of them came out of, they moved home to Rome, and suddenly we get another religion that's based on the same stories. The coincidences are amazing. Oh, he's got a big hat, look, I love his hat. Actually, someone pointed out some of the symbolism of that. When you look at that hat sideways, it's like a fish head, And the fish head keeps coming up in terms of Nimrod, which symbolizes a fish. Now, this is a wonderful example. You look at the deities who died to us, sins could be forgiven, died at Easter, and born on December 20th, the Virgin Mother. There's endless numbers of them. This is a classic, one called Mithra. Mithra was basically replaced by Christianity. And the reason that so many people moved from Mithra worship across to Christian worship was because it was so bloody seamless, or just the names changed. Everything else was the same. They symbolized Mithra as a lion, the sun. They said that he held the keys to heaven. And there's the serpent, the snake, going around him. They said of Mithra, he was born to a virgin mother. He died to save the sins of humanity. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh to his birth. And on it goes. It's just a mirror. When you go back even further to ancient Egypt, on the left, you've got Horus, the son of God of ancient Egypt, that is constantly symbolized, as I've shown, by the Illuminati. You go back to the Egypt big time with the bloodlines. And on the right is Jesus. Some interesting little correlations here. Where are we? Jesus was the light of the world. Horus was the light of the world. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the life. Horus said he was the truth, the life. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the house of bread. Horus was born in Anu, the place of bread. Jesus was the good shepherd. Horus was the good shepherd. 7 fishers board a boat with Jesus. 7 people board a boat with Horus. Jesus was the lamb. Horus was the lamb. Jesus is identified with a cross. Horus is identified with a cross. Jesus was baptized at 30. Horus was baptized at 30. Jesus was the child of a virgin Mary. Horus was the child of a virgin Isis. The birth of Jesus was marked by a star. The birth of Horus was marked by a star. Jesus was the child teacher in the temple. Horus was the child teacher in the temple. Jesus had 12 disciples. Horus had 12 followers. Jesus was the morning star. Horus was the morning star. Jesus was the Christ. Horus was the Christ. Jesus was tempted on a mountain by Satan. Horus was tempted on a mountain by Set. Did they have plagiarism laws in those days? I don't know. We seem to be following ourselves rather obviously here. And what these things kept doing was creating prison religions, not only prison religions that were fiercely enforced to keep people from expanding their minds to see the true nature and magnificence of who we all are, whatever our genetic background. This, you would think, is Mary holding Jesus. It's classic. This is how the ancient Egyptians depicted Isis holding the baby Horus. The cross supposed to be a Christian symbol. No. It goes back as far as you can follow history, the cross. So, I'm not going to go into this now. There's too much to do. But like I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of evidence that a Roman aristocratic family, very much part of the bloodline, called the Piso family, wrote the original gospel stories, which have, of course, been rewritten and messed around with ever since. Now, the person who took those gospel stories and turned them into the religion we know today is a guy called Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor, who called together 318 bishops, it is said, at his palace at Nicaea, which is now Iznik in northwest Turkey, to make them decide what Christians should believe, because they were arguing among themselves like crazy, and so they should. Who's to tell anyone what to believe? But he wanted a creed which everyone would agree on, and then it would be fiercely enforced. They had a punch-up, apparently. They were kicking and cussing, and eventually he imposed what's called the Nicene Creed, which is still the basis of what Christians are supposed to believe to this day. This cross is part of the mythology that the night after, or the night before the Battle of Mithrian Bridge, when he was fighting to become emperor, that he saw this cross kind of manifest in front of him, and Jesus said, by this cross you will conquer, but in this sign you will conquer, to be absolutely accurate. Now that sounds like the bloody Prince of Peace, doesn't it? I mean, it really does. And Constantine the Great wasn't a Christian. He was a sun worshipper. He was one of the bloodlines. He worshipped a deity called Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. And to him, he was creating just another sun-based religion for the masses to take literally, to keep them in line. And that's where Christianity came from, although the vicar didn't tell me that. And here's the Christian bloodline, getting back to bloodlines. It's amazing how this bloodline keeps turning up. The Piso family, the Roman aristocratic family who I feel strongly actually wrote the original gospel stories, they were the same family, and admitted to this, of Herod the Great, who they put into their stories in an historical context. They were the same bloodline as Constantine the Great, who created Christianity as we know it through the Nicene Creed. Many of the Pisos, and this is provable fact, were the early popes in the Roman Church. King Ferdinand of Spain and Queen Isabella of Castile, supporters of Christopher Columbus's journey to discover America, they were the people behind the Spanish Inquisition that burned and killed anyone who didn't agree with every element of the religion that their early ancestors on the bloodline had created and sought to impose. And King James I, a Satanist, who gave his name to the most used English version of the Bible to this day, is the same bloodline. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. This is what's going on behind the theme. Joseph Smith, high-degree Freemason, the founder of the Mormon Church, Merovingian bloodline. Go into my website, you'll see some ancestors of this guy who are trying to expose the Satanism that goes on in the Mormon Church, because it's just an Illuminati front, although the vast majority of its people have no idea. Brigham Young, who took over as leader from Joseph Smith. Merovingian bloodline. Who created the Jehovah's Witnesses? Charles Taze Russell, Merovingian bloodline. They're there to divide and rule us, to create prisons of the mind that we will take and allow to disconnect us from multidimensional infinity. And of course, when they die, you see some evidence of their background. This is Charles Taze Russell's grave. He was ritually sacrificed on Halloween, and they put him in this thing, you know. I hope he'll be very happy, you know. Incidentally, at the risk of being accused of being racist here, but who gives a shit? Provably, both the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, who were massively connected at the top, were funded into existence by the Rothschild Bank in New York, because the Rothschilds couldn't give a shit about Jewish people. They have mercilessly manipulated them for centuries, and in this century most grotesquely. And if we are going to allow ourselves to get pulled into the idea that because they are claimed to be of a certain genetic background, that they're not going to treat their own people like shit, then we're going to lose the plot. And it seems some people in Vancouver this week have done. Now, working not only have you got a situation in which the bloodlines are working among themselves, they have created a secret society network, a pyramidal system through which they manipulate using people who are going to work, doing their job, going home, and have no idea what they're making a contribution to. The secret society network has been fundamental to hiding the existence of the bloodlines and introducing the agenda. And when you, and I'll give you just an example here, when you start to look at these different secret societies like the Freemasons are supposed to have started in like the 1700s. No, that's when they got the name Freemasonry. These secret societies today go back right into the ancient world where the bloodlines came from, Babylon, ancient Egypt, etc. I'll give you an example. Around the time of the Crusades, in Jerusalem, 3 Knights organizations suddenly appeared, almost together, which still exist today and have among their number some of the top people in modern politics, business, banking, military, etc. One was called the Teutonic Knights, which relate to Germany, and it was through the Teutonic Knights network in this century that the Nazis were created and manifested. in the horror of the first half of this century. Also about that time, a group of knights called the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem also appeared. Today, in their Catholic expression, they're called the Knights of Malta, and their official head is the Pope. And in their Protestant expression, they're called the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, and their official head is the Queen of England. The other one was the Knights Templar, again, around the same time. Now, the Knights Templars' official history says that they were created to protect pilgrims who were visiting the Holy Land. Well, there were 9 of these buggers for about 9 years. You're going to protect a lot of pilgrims. I mean, it's just a cover story. By the way, the Knights Templar symbol was the red cross on the white background, which is the ancient Phoenician symbol. And what these 9 knights did is they parked their bums in Jerusalem, right next to Temple Mount. And suddenly, after about 9 years, things began to motor very fast. A couple of them came back and had discussions with this guy Bernard. You know, this guy, St. Bernard, you know, the name the St. Bernard dog after and all that stuff. And what happened was that suddenly they started signing up many people, hundreds and hundreds of people, into the Knights Templar. And they were signing up the noble, royal, aristocratic families of France and then further afield. To join the Templars, you had to give them your wealth and land, so they became very wealthy very quickly. They set up 2 centers for their finances. One was in Paris, the other one was in London. These are still the terrible twins of Illuminati operational manipulation in the world today. By 1307, the King of France, Philip the Fair, who appears to have been anything but, he's up to his neck in debt to the Templars. The crown heads of Europe are up to their neck in debt to the Templars, just as their successors today have the governments of the world up to their neck in debt, because debt equals control. And what were they doing, the Templars? They were lending people money that doesn't exist and charging interest on it. Now, this is a scam that these bloodlines have played throughout history. They just do it on a global scale today. Now, Philip the Fair was really kind of fed up with this, and there were other reasons too, and he issued secret orders to purge the Templars on Friday the 13th in 1307 in France. That's why Friday the 13th has been considered unlucky ever since. I'm not saying all the Templars were malevolent and manipulators. I'm talking about the force that was controlling the Templars. So, the secret orders weren't quite secret enough. And the Templars, most of them, got away, because they had a massive fleet of ships by this time that were doing all their trade, because they were a commercial operation. And when Philip the Fair went into the headquarters in Paris to get the loot, it was empty because they'd gone. Now, a lot of research has been done in recent years about where they went. These Templars were in the knowledge. They were part of this underground knowledge stream of this Illuminati network. The people controlling were anyway. And they definitely went 2 places, and they almost certainly went a third. They almost certainly was across here, because they knew, because of the Phoenicians who went there long before, that America existed. Now, one way they went was from their port in La Rochelle at the time of the purge in 1307 down to Portugal, where they hid behind a Christian front, the Templars under another name, called the Knights of Christ. And they were a maritime organization. Of course they were. They had a bloody big fleet to use. And one of the most famous Grand Masters of the Knights of Christ, i.e. these Templars, fleeing Templars in Portugal, was called Prince Henry the Navigator. Now that's very significant, because one of the sea captains close to Prince Henry the Navigator was the father-in-law of Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus wasn't looking for the India and tripped over America. He knew basically where he was going because he was in this knowledge stream. And what were the flags that Columbus flew on his ships? The red cross on the white background, the Templar flag. Who financed him? Isabella and Ferdinand, the people behind the Spanish Inquisition. He was also financed by the de Medici family, who keeps coming up. And so what was happening was, this was a time the Illuminati wanted to populate America and the Americas and destroy that ancient knowledge that was there among those native peoples. And they did a magnificent job, but not quite good enough. Now, why did they call this guy Columbus? I like that one. When his name, he used to sign his name colon. They call him Columbus in the stories. I think they used to call him colon because he was full of shit. No, they weren't. No, they didn't. No. I'm kidding. Here's the Templars here, the red cross and the white background. There's the red cross and the white background. And this is the first, apparently, discovery of America with Columbus coming over here. So let's look at old Chris. Interestingly, and I can't emphasize it enough, I mean, my chin has dropped to the ground over the years when I see the obsession with symbolism and code. I mentioned earlier that the female deity of Babylon was Queen Semiramis, and they symbolized her as a dove. Therefore, the dove has become a major Illuminati symbol going back to Babylon. It's played, see, we think it's to do with peace. So we see a dove and we think, oh yeah, it's a peaceful sign. It doesn't mean that to the Illuminati. And when the Illuminati moved from Babylon to Rome, they worshipped Queen Semiramis under the name Venus Columba, which means Venus the dove. The word for dove in French to this day is colombe. So Christopher Columbus was a code name for the dove, the bloodlines moving across and parking themselves in a new area of territory, which we call North America. So we have Columbia Pictures, Columbia University, the District of Columbia, British Columbia. It's all this dove Semiramis symbolism. There again, this is a Freemasonic symbol. The dove, there's the pyramid, which will become very significant as we go along here. In the regalia of British royalty, these stick shields, these septics or something, scepters, I don't know what they bloody call them, you have the dove, the dove. And in the Illuminati symbolism, the Queen of England is a manifestation of Queen Semiramis, because it's all ritual. And on Trinity Broadcasting Network, have you ever seen that? I have to turn it off to have a fix once. I turn it on to have a fix once a day. It's so bloody funny. It's a Christian Broadcasting Network, and they have the dove there because the Trinity Broadcasting Network is a front for the Illuminati, just like Pat Robertson's Christian Broadcasting Network is. Go into the website. Now, just as the Templars came down here and then manifested over here with Columbus, so the other place they went after the purge in 1307 was around the west coast of Ireland and into Scotland. There have been some good books written in recent years documenting this. They went into Scotland, and they went there for a number of reasons. First of all, a lot of the bloodlines manifested in Scotland, moved to Scotland. People think that a lot of the classic Scottish names like Sinclair and stuff are actually Scottish. Not true. They came from this area of the world, and originally, of course, back where the whole thing started from. And there was a family in France that was fundamentally involved in the creation, right at the start of the Templars, called the St. Clair family. When it moved to Scotland and Rosslyn Castle near Edinburgh, it evolved into the Sinclair family. And the Sinclair family are one of the major Illuminati bloodlines. Not everyone called Sinclair, of course, because the name has got, moved out. I'm talking about that bloodline going through that calls itself Sinclair, the main one. And so when the Templars were fleeing, they went into Scotland because they were going into very friendly areas with the Sinclairs, etc. And also, Robert the Bruce was having problems with the Pope. Scotland was excommunicated, so the Pope had also joined in the destroy Templars thing through Philip the Fair, didn't have access to them there. Now this is not just historical naval contemplating, because the Templars manifested out of Scotland eventually under another name, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, with its 33 official degrees and many Illuminati degrees above that, is the biggest secret society in the world today. It pervades world politics, world business, world banking, world military, world media ownership. and it is the Templars under another name. It goes right back into the ancient world. Just changed its name to Freemasons, but it's the same seamless story going through history. This is one of the holy grails of the Illuminati, really, over the years. It's called Rosslyn Chapel on Sinclair land, and the reason I show this is because in the stonework are sweet corn plants and cactus plants that at the time this was built were only found in the United States, probably still are. That's significant because this chapel was built and that stonework put in place long before Columbus left on his journey. And there's a lovely book, it's a very rare book written by a Canadian, that shows that Prince Henry Sinclair, not Prince Henry the Navigator, Prince Henry Sinclair of Rosslyn Chapel, of the Sinclair bloodline, landed in North America in 1398. 100 years before Columbus, because they knew it was there, because they have knowledge that we don't. They just want to sell us a fantasy of history. Now, when the Illuminati moved into America and North America, the same will be true of Canada if the research is done. They wanted, as I talked about this morning, to take over America. Okay, and they could do that with the colonies and all that stuff to start with. But that was over control, and it had a finite life. They wanted to seamlessly move it into covert control, which can go on forever until it's identified. And to do that, they put several placemen into the founding fathers of America, people like Benjamin Franklin, in this illusion called the War of Independence, which the American army did not win. The English chose to lose. If you look at it, it was unbelievable what they were doing to allow the Americans to win, because that was the idea. And, you know, in America, and I hold my hand up to them, you know, I don't agree with their version of life, and I don't agree with many of their views, but some of the Christian movements in America are doing some wonderful work at the level of exposing the manipulation, financial and political. But they still go starry-eyed and glassy-eyed and tearful when they talk about the founding fathers. Well, I'd like to talk about the founding fathers, particularly this guy, Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was a Satanist, and he was a wonderful believer in freedom. He used to buy and sell black slaves, this guy. Now, in the run-up to the Declaration of Independence and the War of Independence, this guy wasn't in America supporting Americans. He'd parked his bum at 28 a street near Trafalgar Square, 28 Craven Street. And he was operating in the secret society network, particularly a notorious satanic human sacrifice operation called the Hellfire Club, which included the Prince of Wales at that time. And he was operating in these networks with the very people the Americans were fighting, the people on the ground, the fodder. And I don't know whether you saw this, but it probably wasn't reported much in North America. But like I said earlier, and I'm going to unfortunately get into this a little bit later, when you follow these bloodlines, you follow human sacrifice and blood drinking, which may be because of the reasons I talked about earlier, or people tell me from the inside. But when they were renovating in the last few years 28 Craven Street in London to be a kind of a museum to Benjamin Franklin's life, they dug the floor up. And under it, they found 10 bodies, 6 of them children, that had very strange things done to them. And according to this article, they've dated the bodies to the time that Benjamin Franklin and his mate were in there. And they've tried to explain it away in this article that they must have been into body snatching for medical research. Well, when you get into what the Hellfire Club was about, and this guy was a major player, maybe there was another reason why there's 10 bodies, 6 of them children, under the bloody floorboards. The first President of the United States, George Washington, was not just a high-degree Freemason. The whole inaugural ceremony was run by Freemasons. There's pictures of it, the bloody aprons as they walked down. They took over America under the guise of freedom. And then we've got old Thomas Jefferson, another bloodline guy. He actually wrote that all men are created equal while owning 200 black slaves. I mean, can I have a word, mate? Just a little word here. I mean, you know what I mean? Because right up to the present day, very easy to say. You don't have to live it, you just have to convince the people that that's the case. Then you do as you like. It's called winning elections. And now we come down these bloodlines of presidents to this guy, George W. Bush. And maybe he won't win the election, but 3 years ago I predicted that he would be the next president of the United States. Not because I'm a genius or a prophet, but because when you understand the bloodlines and how high this guy up is in the hierarchy for a president, then everything starts to fall into place. This guy, George Bush, has an astonishing history. And if you just read my books or go into the website, you'll see the sort of stuff this guy is into. It is staggering. And he is the man named more than any other as a shapeshifter. Again, rising sun. And again, when you look in these Illuminati-controlled magazines like Newsweek and Time, you see the symbolism, rising sun. It may seem an obvious headline, but to them, it's symbolic. The sun is constantly used. Which brings me to this, the secret language. If you're running a secret operation, then you need your codes and you need your symbols that your initiates understand and can read, but the general population don't even know what's going on. And here's some examples of that as we go along, because these are all around us. The Illuminati, one of the great Illuminati symbols over the years, this was a Templar symbol, was the skull and bones. This is on a Freemasonic apron from the last century. And so, as a result of that skull and bones symbol of the Illuminati, we get one of the most notorious secret societies in the whole of North America, the Skull and Bones Society. Most famous member, George Bush, soon to be most famous member, George W. Bush. And his father, George Bush's father, George W.'s grandfather, Prescott Bush, was also a member of this Skull and Bones Society. Invitation by bloodline only. And the Russell Trust that relates to the Russell family and Charles Taze Russell that started the Jehovah's Witnesses are the people who funded the creation of the Skull and Bones Society. And the Russell Trust used to use Skull and Bones flags on their ships as they ran drugs into China during the Opium Wars for the British or the Illuminati based in Britain. Skull and Bones is a major symbol, but the pyramid is even bigger than that. And it's not just that the pyramid is a symbol in the coded language. The pyramid is a geometrical structure which does things to energy, particularly if you plonk them in these vortex points. And so they've used the pyramid not just as a symbol, but also to manipulate energy. A few years ago, during the reign in France of the 33-degree Freemason François Mitterrand, they staggered anyone with an eye for aesthetics by building this big glass pyramid right next to the Louvre Museum, this beautiful museum in Paris. And people were staggered. And they had a ritual opening of this ugly friggin' thing. There's Margaret Thatcher and all these other people here. All the heads of Europe were there. Now, why did they put that there? In a few minutes, we'll see why they put it there. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the all-seeing eye, the watchers from that hand by that Credo Mutwa's artifact, is a massive Illuminati symbol. This is the guiding force that controls the pyramid. And this was put on the dollar bill, this ancient Illuminati symbol, by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the major frontmen for the Illuminati in the 20th century, in 1933. And this is a mass of esoteric symbolism which the Illuminati initiates understand and the rest of us don't understand. It breaks down, it is said, all that Latin and stuff on it as he favors our undertaking new order of the ages, or words to that effect. And down the bottom, by the way, it says May the 1st, 1776. Now, people have taken that to be the year of the Declaration of Independence. That's why it's on the dollar bill. Or it doesn't say May the 1st, it says 1776. But on May the 1st, 1776, something else happened. There was the creation of a major element within the Illuminati network called the Bavarian Illuminati that was behind many of the manipulations and wars and conflicts in Europe which followed. Again, you see this. This is the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. The Reynolds is one of the bloodlines out of North Carolina. And the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company was owned at one time, maybe it still is, by the Gray family that are very, very close to George Bush. In North Carolina, in the area that this company controls, people don't realize this, that race purity did not end with Adolf Hitler. In 1946 in North Carolina, in the area that this lot controlled, R.J. Reynolds and the families that control it, children were given intelligence tests, and those that fell below a certain level were forcibly brought with their parents in front of a eugenics court, and little boys and little girls were sterilized because they did not reach the desired level of intelligence. That was not in Nazi Germany. That was in 1946 in North Carolina. The Nazis and the fascists did not end in 1945. They just took the jackboots off and the uniforms and put on business suits and smart shirt and ties. Again, the all-seeing eye keeps coming up again and again. This, look at that, this is the symbol of British intelligence. Look at it, British intelligence. That, by the way, the fleur-de-lis is a symbol of the Merovingian bloodline. It goes back to, this is the Babylonian Trinity. You'll find that everywhere, particularly in relation to British royalty. This is MI5. And British intelligence is the premier intelligence operation in the world that controls, indeed created, the CIA, and certainly will be massively influential in affairs in Canada. Even the all-seeing eye is on the capstone at the top. Again, this is triads from China, same thing, because they all connect in the end at the top level. This is Fidelity Investments, again, the same thing, recurring. And the eye, the all-seeing eye, CBS Television. And what does CBS stand for? Columbia Broadcasting. Everywhere you look, you see this stuff once you start to see what's going on. Now, what you're looking at here, and you know, if I saw this for the first time and heard what I'm about to say, I might say, don't be bloody daft. But when you put it together with all the rest, you start to realize that there is nothing that is a coincidence in Illuminati symbolism. This is Dealey Plaza. This is where they killed Kennedy. They killed him in a street plan of a pyramid with a capstone missing. That is a railway bridge that cuts off the join. Now, this area is very, very sacred to the Secret Society network. This is where they put the first Freemasonic temple in Dallas. And they killed him here, Kennedy here, in this, what is to them a sun temple in their kind of, the way that they see the world and their ritual. Now, I'm going to come back to Kennedy in a second, because he fits in many areas. Now we come to the main Illuminati symbol, which you'll see all over the place. It's the lighted torch or the flame. And this comes, not in part at least, from another recurring story from the ancient world. And that is of some hero who took fire from the gods, fire equaling knowledge, and handed it to humans. In other words, these bloodlines, it seems. Now, this is the most famous one, a Greek hero called Prometheus, who was supposed to have taken fire, knowledge from the gods, and given it to humans. Now, this, therefore, the flame became the major Illuminati symbol. Now, this gold statue of Prometheus is actually in the Rockefeller Center in New York. It was put there by the Rockefellers, the bloodline branch managers of America, and further afield. And there's a plaque there to that effect. Now, to the Rockefellers, that is massive symbolism, which they understand about the bloodlines holding the knowledge and using it for this agenda. Now, that's what that is. This is not the one in New York Harbor. It's an exact replica. I haven't been to New York recently. That's why you've got a fairground ride. This one's in Las Vegas, which is a massive Illuminati symbolism. My goodness me. You want to see that place? Now, what we are led to believe is that in New York Harbor is saying, this is the land of the free. What it's actually saying, because this was given to New York by French Freemasons from Paris, who knew what it really stood for, what it's really saying is, we're running the show, we're telling you, but you can't see, can you? What a laugh. And the, people that have studied Babylonian imagery and stuff say this whole package is very, very much along the lines of Queen Semiramis. Now, in an island in the River Seine in Paris, where this came from, to this day, a lot of people don't know that, is a virtual mirror image of the Statue of Liberty. So that flame and the torch is the Illuminati symbol. The illuminated ones, illuminated into knowledge we don't normally get in the public arena. Back to Kennedy. When they killed Kennedy, here, the grassy knoll, in the street plan, which is a pyramid with a capstone missing, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry put up an obelisk, an ancient symbol going way back into ancient Egypt and before, of course, and on the top of it they put the lighted torch. We killed him, we're telling you, but you can't see it. And what have they put on Kennedy's grave from that day to this? The lighted torch, the eternal flame, the Illuminati. We killed him, we're telling you, you can't see it. And back to Paris. That is the place, the image, on top of the Pont d'Alma tunnel, the bridge or passage of the moon goddess on the ancient site of the Merovingian ritual chambers of sacrifice to the goddess Diana, where people take their tributes to the Princess of Wales. It is an exact and massive replica of the torch held by the Statue of Liberty. It's called the Liberty Flame, a thing there to say that on the side. It's standing on a black pentagram, and you can't get more satanic imagery than that. On her grave, Oldthorpe Park in Northamptonshire, you've got the flame. And again, Columbia Pictures, Columbia, the dove, Semiramis, the lady holding the lighted torch. This is Christian Broadcasting Network of Pat Robertson, George Bush's big mate, who's pressing for George W. Bush to become president. Again, on the coin from America there. So when you start to understand the secret language and start to fit everything together as the layers come together, you can see that, or you may not see, but I can see anyway, or I choose to see, in my view, that there is a massive network of knowledge here which has been kept from us, which when you start to understand how it fits together, the world starts to change. Now, not only, I've got some amazing stuff coming up here now, not only do you get this imagery in the way that I've just described, you get it in the streets all around us, like I said earlier. Let's go back to this center of the street plan in Paris, the Arc de Triomphe. And the arch, of course, is great secret society symbolism, like the Royal Arch of Freemasonry and all that stuff. It's not just in terms of the street plans that, or the symbolism in general, that they're taking the mick. It's not even just a code. They know that everything affects energy. And if you put certain buildings and flows of streets in a certain relationship to each other with certain symbols, you are going to affect the energy. And as we are living in energy, what that energy is doing is going to affect us. And if you can manipulate what this energy is doing, it's going to affect us mentally and emotionally. They understand how to do this. This is a wonderful example in Paris of how they fit it together. This is the Arc de Triomphe. We're going to start here, right underneath the arch, looking down the most famous thoroughfare in Paris called the Champs-Élysées. Dodi Fayed's apartment, where they were supposed to be heading but weren't, when the crash happened with Diana, is here somewhere. Now, we're going to be underneath the arch we are now, and we're looking down the Champs-Élysées. There's the flame, the Illuminati. And then we're going in an exact straight line, straight down the Champs-Élysées. The next thing we will hit is this. It's a 3,200-year-old original Egyptian obelisk from Luxor in Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, with the golden tip on the top, the golden penis of Osiris. We're going to go straight through the middle of that symbolically in an exact straight line. The next thing we hit is the arches of this structure, which is very much like Marble Arch in London. There's the obelisk right in the middle there. And we're going to continue to walk dead straight. And this is the next thing we hit. The big black pyramid that no one could understand why they would put it up next to this beautiful Louvre museum. It wasn't there because it looked nice. It's there because it's part of the build-up of the manipulation of the energy we call the city of Paris. Same everywhere. in the major cities of the Illuminati. This is from a book called Talisman of the United States, a guy who has looked at the street plan of Washington and focused on the amazing imagery and symbolism within it. And of course, they started with a blank sheet of paper, the Washingtons and the Jeffersons and the people orchestrating them when this was built. And a guy called Charles L'Enfant, a French Freemason who was brought in to do the original plan. Now, this is the Congress building, and he's identified what appears to be a Star of David. But of course, like I said earlier, this is not an exclusively Jewish symbol. This is an ancient symbol that goes right back thousands and thousands of years right across the planet. It is just an esoteric symbol. It became associated with Jewish people when the Rothschilds started using it some few centuries ago. And that's from Jewish historical sources. It's just an esoteric symbol. But you show that and they go, you're anti-Semitic. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's to do with what it is. He's also identified that key buildings in Washington line up with where the sun rises at the winter and summer solstice, which is what the ancients did with their stone circles and with their massive earthworks. I'm going to come back to Washington in a second, because I want to give you some background to understand the significance of what I'm going to show you in that street plan, however. What you're looking at is, in research into satanic ritual by the elite and the famous names, a notorious place. It's called Bohemian Grove. It's about 75 miles north of San Francisco, and it's next to the Russian River. It's not Russian at the moment because it's quite calm, but it's called the Russian River. Now, behind these trees in Sonoma County is 2,700 acres of redwood forest. And every year in July, the elite, the presidents, past, present, and future, the media owners, the bankers, the business leaders, the key Illuminati figures in North America and further afield turn up for a summer camp at Bohemian Grove. If you read Transformation of America by Cathy O'Brien and other works, you can get a feel for what really goes on in this summer camp. I took these pictures myself, as near as I could get. It says no through road there. You get up and you eventually become to Bohemian Grove some way up there. I've never been that far. Now, here's a picture from Bohemian Grove taken in 1957. This is Glenn Seaborg. I got it off a website telling the story of his life. It wasn't like from Bohemian Grove's website. Glenn Seaborg was one of the guys who helped to develop plutonium, etc. He's making a speech at Bohemian Grove in 1957. Look, over here we have Uncle Ron. I guess in 1957 he's still getting on and off his horse, is he? I don't know. I suppose he is. He's like an actor, B-movie actor. Over here, Tricky Dicky, Richard Nixon. Here they are in Bohemian Grove, another element of the Illuminati network, and both go on, despite their vastly different backgrounds, to become President of the United States. Like I say, they are selected by blood, not by ballot. Now here's another picture from Bohemian Grove taken by a journalist on a long lens. What you're looking at during this summer camp is a ritual in which the elite of the world, or the elite of North America anyway, they dress up in long gowns with like hoods on. You know, Uncle Ron looks great in one of them, I bet, he used to. And here they are. It's much clearer on the original. It doesn't come down quite so sharp onto a computer. Now what we got here, a 40-foot stone owl. Did I come in late? We're talking the people you see on the Criminal News Network every day. What are we doing here? What we're doing is you have to look back to understand this. As a group around Sonoma County have begun to expose, and you can get a hold of them on the website, you go back in the ancient world and you find that the Phoenicians and the Babylonians and the people of that area at that time, they used to sacrifice children to a deity called Moloch or Molech. In the Old Testament even, you can see references to people being condemned for putting their children through the fire to Molech. when I've talked, and I've done so much research into the Satanism network, not least because to understand that staggeringly is to understand how the world's controlled and who's doing it. And I've talked to victims of this stuff, most of which don't survive, of course, but the few that have, comparatively. And I've talked to therapists around the world, particularly a great friend of mine in London, Vera Diamond. And they tell me that today, these elite names are still doing ritual sacrifices of children to a deity called Moloch or Molech, the same as they were thousands of years ago. So we ask the question, how do they symbolize Moloch, as an owl? Which is staggering, considering this is what I discovered. It wasn't in the book, I just saw it as I was looking at the street plan of Washington. This is the Congress building. And all I've done is draw a red line around the roads within the Congress complex. It is a quite obvious owl, but don't take my word for it. This next one I have not even touched. It's a straight picture from a Washington Street directory you can buy anywhere in Washington. Not only is the Congress building in the belly of the owl, it's standing on a pyramid. The pyramid and all-seeing owl. And that in the belly of the owl, the Illuminati, you couldn't get much more symbolic than that. Now, if we move on, like I said with the Nazis, where they took a swastika and they turn it around to indicate the negative, what the Satanists do is they do two things. They either reverse symbolize symbols, the five-pointed star points down, Satanism, or they distort esoteric symbols to destroy their balance, and that also indicates the negative to them in their symbolic language. This here is the Congress building. This here is the White House. And the center of a pentagram is a pentagon, which just happens to be the shape and name of the very headquarters of the American military. So if we go back to this symbol, just let's take this example. Here's the White House. You go straight the way through there, that middle road, I think it's called 16th Street, from the White House. You get to here somewhere, and you find a very strange building in the street plan of Washington. And it's Arderike. There you go. There it is. And here you have the symbolism of the Sphinx here, kind of feel. There you have the Horus, the magnificent it is when you see it live, sun coming up over the horizon. And here we have basically an Egyptian temple. Here's a close-up of the, or a closer-up of the sun, Horus, son of God of ancient Egypt. What is this building? It's the supreme headquarters, 33rd degree Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Freemasonry did not begin in the 1700s. It is part of a seamless web of manipulation which changes its name from time to time so we lose the plot. And it goes back right to where these bloodlines come out of, or at least as far back as I've been able to research so far. And again, it keeps coming up. This is the imagery of the Rosicrucian organization. Thomas Jefferson was a Rosicrucian. Again, it's all Egyptian symbolism. There's the sun again, because that's where this stuff comes out of, that part of the world particularly. Now, this is not a political building, the Congress building. It's actually a temple to the Illuminati Secret Society network. The reason it's called Capitol Hill is because when the Illuminati was based in Rome during the Roman Empire and the creation of Christianity, one of their sacred places of worship and ritual was a place called Capitoline Hill. And so this became Capitol Hill when the Freemasons built it. And when Madeleine Albright, the high priestess of American politics, and I'm not kidding, was appointed by Clinton to be Secretary of State, her first overseas visit was to Italy and Europe, and she made an official visit to Capitoline Hill, which to her would have been a pilgrimage and a highly symbolic visit for those in the know of what's going on. So when you look at the Nazis, who were just an expression, another wing of this manipulation to create the divide and rule and the war that created 55 million casualties of all races, you find the same symbolism because it's the same gang. The Maltese cross, the cross of the Knights of Malta. Classic on the Nazi uniform. This guy's won the lottery. He's got the lot. The skull and bones, the reverse sun symbol, the swastika, and the eagle, which evolved as a symbol out of the phoenix, the sunbird of the Phoenicians and of the Egyptians. Here's another Nazi, the flying sun disk, going back to ancient Egypt. It's the same symbolism because we're looking at two sides of the same thing. Now, the Heil Hitler symbol actually was a part of a ritual from a secret society called the Order of the Golden Dawn, which was most famously peopled by a guy called Aleister Crowley, a close friend of Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain during the wartime, and also very much operating in Germany, where the Nazis were coming out of the esoteric occult Teutonic Knights network through the Thule Society, the Edelweiss Society, and the Vril Society. And again, the heraldry and the stuff, this is the crown they crown the queen with. I don't know what they bloody do, silly thing. Anyway, they have the Maltese cross. You find all the symbolism in all that stuff as well. And this is interesting. Liberty. You'll find this in the United States Congress. It's about liberty, you'll see, because we're free, you'll see. Very free country, you'll say, very bright. Well, what's that doing there, then? That symbol is the very symbol from which we get the name fascism. It's called the fasci. It comes from the Roman Empire. And why does it symbolize fascism? Because they tie rods, individual elements, countries, people, organizations together tightly, and they rule them from the top with an axe head, a rod of iron. It's what fascism is. I've just described the European Union. The European Union, which they want NAFTA to evolve into the America's version of, which is why they're crashing the Canadian dollar. They've got get the one currency and get rid of the Canadian currency. The European Union has a situation in which they have centralized control of the countries of Europe in Brussels, where bureaucrats make decisions, unelected bureaucrats, which override the national laws of the countries of Europe. That's classic fascism, even on the basis of the very symbol we get the word from. And this is the Colorado seal. Look at this. Colorado is a massive Illuminati center, not least Denver, where that airport is with the gargoyles. There you have, again, the sun and the symbol of the pyramid. But look, there again, the classic fascist symbol on a so-called free American state. And when you go to the Knights of Columbus, I took this in Eastern Canada. Again, the classic fascist symbol. They understand at the top level what it means. They're talking to us. Again, ARCO, Atlantic Richfield Oil Company. You see it in the transnationals. That's the pyramid with the capstone missing. Look out from above. This is the House of Lorraine, one of the great depositories of the bloodline. This is the double cross of the House of Lorraine, the cross of Lorraine, from where we get the term being double-crossed, being manipulated, and how appropriate then that we should find it in this Exxon Oil Company. This is from a copper operation in America, and according to the research of Fritz Springmeier in a book called The Illuminati Bloodlines, this was a symbol almost exact from the Bavarian Illuminati, which started on May the 1st, 1776. And so we get in America the Circle K operation. K and circles appear, I've not really worked this out yet, appear to be a part of the code. And there you have Texaco. Again, it's all esoteric symbolism. The circle, the pentagram, and the T-square of Freemasonry. And Bill Clinton's been there as well, as you can see there. I didn't see that. But because it could have been Christopher Columbus because he's so foolish. No, he's not. No. The point is, though, that it's not just symbolism for, let's take the piss. We'll put it out there. We'll know what it means, and they don't. What a laugh. We have a subconscious which picks up everything. And they have this understanding of how to speak to the subconscious. And the subconscious often speaks in imagery and symbolism. This is why we dream in symbolic ways rather than literal ways. And this is why the top copywriters in advertising and stuff, they know how to use imagery and to use certain words to talk to the subconscious. The idea is to put images and thoughts into our subconscious, which eventually filter to the conscious, at which point we say, hey, I've got a good idea. One of the things that happened, this is a famous story, is that what they used to do some time ago is they used to put flash frames of Coke bottles in the movie just before the interval. Now, the conscious level just couldn't see that. Boom, gone. The film never seemed to change. The subconscious sees everything. And until they banned that, Coke sales at intervals in cinemas went up significantly because it went in at the subconscious, came, I fancy a Coke. We think it's our personal thought. It's coming from the subconscious, and that's the way they go in. That's the way they go in with the mind control. Again, it's amazing how you see the Freemasonic floors in famous cathedrals because they control the religions. This is Westminster Abbey. And all over the world, I haven't seen a policeman recently in Canada, although I might have seen one earlier today if things hadn't have changed. But you see this, the black and white squares on the uniform of the police all over the world, in Britain, Australia, America. Again, Freemasonry imagery, secret society imagery. And I want to emphasize this. I'm not saying for a minute that Freemasons in any way influence the police force. I think it's just an ugly rumor myself, you know. So I'm going to finish this part of the talk by bringing in now an element which has come more and more into my research in recent times. These three things are all connected. When I started following these bloodlines, again, these ceremonies and rituals and blood drinking went with them wherever I went. And the more that time has passed, the more I've begun to understand how important this stuff is to these reptilian bloodlines. And I'm just passing on, I haven't been there, I haven't seen it, but I'm just passing on what I'm told by people who've been on the inside and seen it. That for some reason, these hybrid bloodlines need to drink mammal blood, human blood, particularly blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, because there's something in that bloodstream that makes it more effective than any other, to hold those mammalian codes open so they don't manifest in their true form. And the satanic imagery is all over the place if you know what to look for. Well, this is one kind of example. When they wanted to build a statue to George Washington, the first president of the United States, I mean, there's someone in America to build a bloody statue. I mean, I feel it in me water. They must be somewhere. But no, they asked some guy in bloody northern Italy to do it, Florence, you know. So anyway, when George arrives on the ship and they unveil him, I mean, people are aghast, like, you know. I mean, their flabber's never been so gasted, as they say. They put George, he put his arm in the air and his arm down here, and they cover his Bill Clinton's with a piece of cloth, and he's naked from the waist up. Now, this is our esteemed leader, our first president. What are you doing? And it's like the Black Pyramid in Paris. You don't know what they're doing until you have a look at what the Templars used to use and what the Satanists use as the symbol of the negative force. From there to there. Naked from the waist up, that arm down, Bill Clinton's covered with a piece of cloth. This is the classic negative force symbol that comes up again and again. And here's another example. This is the satanic sign for Satan, or whatever name you want to put to that negative malevolent force. Very simple. This is another example of it. That is what the sign for Satan is in Satanism. Well, how about that then? That's what he did during his inauguration speech, or just after it, when he was first made president. And the number of times, it is extraordinary, you see world leaders at speeches, particularly when they get a great opportunity, when the applause starts, doing that. It's extraordinary because that means something. And when you go through, somebody went through his speech, one of his inauguration speeches, And the symbolism in it is just extraordinary when you know in detail what to look for. Oh, Henry looks pissed, doesn't he? This is Doris Duke, a tobacco heiress, American Tobacco. She was massively into Satanism. Seems to have done her good, doesn't it, really? I mean, he looks pissed off with being with her, and she looks really pig sick with being with him, really. But this lady was actually ritually sacrificed, according to sources, number of sources that I've come across, because they, at the end of their lives, they tend to do that to each other. It's almost, again, part of their ritual. It's a very, very strange world that's controlling us. Anton LaVey, his Church of Satan had a number of famous people involved in it. This is Jane Mansfield, who was a high priestess of the Church of Satan. And an offshoot of the Church of Satan of LaVey was an organization called the Temple of Set that was headed by a guy called Michael Aquino, who is very much named by mind control victims as being massively involved in the mind control operations and the trauma-based mind control, which I'll come to in a second. I think he's died recently. The Temple of Set came to light when it was exposed that Michael Aquino was the head of the Temple of Set while being one of the leading lights in the American military's psychological warfare department. And when this was exposed, even in the mainstream media, the authorities said a person's religion is his own business. Well, it might be, but you know, if it involves sacrificing children, I think we ought to have a word in here somewhere. But that's the way that it was received and explained away in that pathetic fashion. This guy is Aleister Crowley. Again, a man who very much was involved with Churchill and the Nazis, and is like a hero in the satanic movement. And he actually wrote books in which he explained how to sacrifice children and the best ones to pick. And people say, oh, it doesn't go on, it's rubbish. Tell the kids that, for goodness sake. We've got to get out of denial, and then they might get out of servitude and torture and horror. This is Winston Churchill, who came to be a kind of classic Christian person, and there he is being inaugurated into the Druid religion. That's not to knock the Druid religion. Just because you're a Druid doesn't mean you go around sacrificing people. I know lots of Druids in England. They're really, really nice people. What I'm saying is, while they claim to be Christians because it's good for the CV and it's good for the kind of image, they're actually into a very different view of life. This guy, my goodness me, this guy is Ted Heath. He's named as I think I mentioned in the talk earlier this morning, as a shapeshifter and a conductor of satanic ritual. And I named him in The Biggest Secret, which came out in February in England, and February 1999, and a journalist went to him, read from the book what I'd said, and this guy's got a lot of money. He could have shut that book down if he was prepared to go to court and let me say my piece. All he said was, I think David Icke must be ill. And that was it. This guy is called Peter Mandelson. He's a guy who is very much involved in the manipulation at the heart of the present Tony Blair government. He's the present guy in charge of the negotiations in Northern Ireland between the various factions. And he's known by his colleagues, and this has been in the media, of course, as the Prince of Darkness. From my understanding, whoever coined that phrase was very inspired indeed, and possibly psychic. Now, these two people are apparently on opposite sides of British politics. They are sitting there together at a convention agreeing that Britain should go further and further and further into the European Union and lose more and more of its national decision-making, because they are two sides of the same force, and the same will be going on in Canada. The Mormons, again, this is the temple in Salt Lake City. The Mormons are a front, and most of them involved in the Mormon religion, like Freemasons, are innocent of this knowledge, but it is a front for satanic activity, child abuse, and child sacrifice. And if you go into my website, like I say, you'll see people from the inside of the Mormon church exposing that, not just me. We need to get out of denial of this. 666, from the number of the beast in Revelations in the Bible, is a code which is an obvious code for Satanism. It comes up again and again and again. So you have it there, and you see it in advertising a lot. Here's 666, look, in this particular advertising for, I don't know what it is, advertising something. And this cold preparation is 666. Now, this is someone the audience here will know, Pierre Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau, on his car, he has 666. And according to a friend of mine in Vancouver, you can write me if I'm wrong, as to say, he was the man who put 666 into the federal government telephone numbers. Now, isn't it strange, therefore, a strange coincidence, that people like Cathy O'Brien name him as a pedophile, a child abuser, and a child sexual abuser? And he's involved in this same stuff. And she names other people as well, including Brian Mulroney. But of course, we mustn't talk about that on the radio, because we have regulations, you see. The game is broomsticks. It's satanic knowledge. It's basically esoteric knowledge which can be used positively as well as malevolently, used malevolently to control instead of being used to set free. And it's just the same knowledge which they use to control us that they want us not to know about. And like I say earlier, this lady was ritually murdered by the very same codes, by the very same symbolism and ritual that you see all the time. And I've talked a bit about, you know, some of the symbolism surrounding it. Just a couple of three-dimensional things people don't know because it's not appeared very much in the media, if at all. People still think that, or the official line is still that this was an accident. What a strange coincidence. There are 17 traffic cameras between the Ritz Hotel and the Pont d'Alma Tunnel. They've never gone down before. All 17 went down while that Mercedes was going from the Ritz Hotel to the tunnel. And if they hadn't have gone down, there would be no mystery about what happened because everything would be on video. At the very same time those 17 traffic cameras went down, all the police frequencies in central Paris went down also. And that's just some of the evidence that that was no accident, quite obviously. But the symbolism surrounding the legends and ritual of the goddess Diana, surrounding her murder, are unbelievable. One of the other things is, one of the things that keeps coming up in the ancient legends of Diana are lakes, islands, etc. And what they've done is buried her on an island in a lake. And when you read The Biggest Secret, 60 pages on this ritual murder, the symbolism is just beyond belief. What's now starting to come to light is the scale of child abuse in the world. I've been talking about this for years, and many, many other people have too, trying to get a voice out there amid the sea of denial and suppression. In Britain now, it's starting to unfold. Some of the walls are starting to come down because the scale is so vast. There are many, many police investigations now investigating the way that phenomenal numbers of children have been abused systematically and sexually abused, and also satanically abused in the rituals and stuff. And the abuse is suppressed through a classic pyramid system. When this system comes down and is dismantled, the scale at which the children of this world of all races, Credo Mutwa talks in detail about exactly the same in Black Africa, the scale at which our children have been abused, sexually abused, violently abused, and killed in satanic ritual is just going to blow our minds, including me, because the scale I've established is nothing like the one yet that I'm going to. And the way it works is the classic situation. The Illuminati, through their various levels, make sure that they put their people in the key positions of power in these key areas which allow the abuse to happen, then fail to investigate it, can, even if it comes to court, then destroy the case, so that the lid is kept on the unbelievable scale at which this is going on. On my website, I got approached by the parents of a lad called Zach, a little 5-year-old kid here, who was in North Carolina, in that classic area where the eugenics was going on at the end of the last century. At the end of the last war, rather, just afterwards. And he started telling classic tales that I've heard all over the world. Amazing tales of how they were taken away from the preschool he was at, and they were subjected to horrendous experiences of seeing rabbits cut up, of seeing babies sacrificed, of being forced to drink blood. And when he started remembering this, and well, not remembering it, talking about it, and the reason he's a bloody courageous kid is because what these people tell them, as he and so many other courageous kids have confirmed, they tell them, if you tell anybody, including your parents, we are going to do this to you. Now, they've seen babies sacrificed. They've seen rabbits cut up in front of them alive. They believe it's going to happen to them if they speak out. They're also told, some of them, that their parents are involved, so you tell your parents you're in real trouble. And so you've got kids all over the world who are living their little lives in terror of A, more abuse, and B, telling anybody about it because of what will happen to them if they do. And this is the structure which keeps it all quiet. And I tell you, I followed up this case in North Carolina. Do you know, it came to light in November. We are now in March. They have closed the case. And you know, the police have not even gone to that school center where he says it happened, and his mate, his little friend, is telling the same story in detail. They have not even gone and asked the other parents at that center if there is any experience they have had with their children that might lead them to believe their children have experienced anything like this. They just put the lid on, bang, bang, and left those 2 kids, and God knows how many more who are still there, to get on with their lives with those memories. It's not happening. Shut up. I don't want to face it. Nor do I, but if we don't, it goes on. And this links into this. Mind control is fundamental at the very heart of how the Illuminati have manipulated the human race. Mass mind control, creating the herd mentality, and other techniques I'll come to as the afternoon starts to move into the modern world. But after the break. But this is individual mind control. It's called trauma-based mind control. They found, and in the Nazi concentration camps where they had an endless supply of victims, people like Joseph Mengele, the angel of death in the concentration camps, who after the war was brought to the Americas by a British and American intelligence operation called Operation Paperclip, and carried on his appalling genetic and mind control experiments in North America, not least at the China Lake Naval Weapons Center in California, and also very much in league with a guy called Ewan Cameron, who many Canadians will know, who was operating out of Montreal at the head of the notorious mind control project called MK Ultra. That was created by the Nazis, who were brought out by people like Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, the first head, and British intelligence, out of Nazi Germany to avoid the Nuremberg trials so they could continue where they left off in this part of the world. And what they discovered, and they've known this a long time, but the concentration camps gave them an opportunity to perfect it, is there's a mechanism of the mind which shuts out memories of extreme trauma. Therefore, when we have a bad road crash, we don't remember the horror of the impact because the mind puts an amnesic barrier around that memory. We can't remember it. Good thing. We don't want to keep remembering that stuff. But like everything, it can be used malevolently. And they realized that if you could systematically traumatize children, particularly before the age of 5 and 6, so you could rewire the brain and the neuron pathways, you could turn their minds into a honeycomb of self-contained amnesic barriers independently working by themselves and independent of each other. A honeycomb. And once you've created that honeycomb of amnesic barriers through putting people through a satanic stuff and this abuse that I'm talking about on this vast scale, you could then program these individual compartments of mind with things that you wanted them to do, assassinate people, whatever, or you could bring that compartment to the front of the mind. They would then experience sexual abuse by people like George Bush, one of the most famous pedophiles in the world, the proof of which and the evidence of which is more on him than anyone else. And they would feel and experience that abuse, and then you push that compartment back into the mind and you bring another one forward, and they do not remember being abused until they have the deprogramming, which breaks down the compartments, and then suddenly, my God, they remember what they never remembered before. And this trauma-based mind control, which has created something called multiple personality disorder, which is not multiple personality at all. It's multiple fragments of amnesic barriers operating independently from each other. Every single amnesic part of the honeycomb thinks it's the whole mind. And this is how they create assassins. This is how they create these kids who go crazy with guns at Columbine High School and other places. Guys like Thomas Hamilton, who went crazy with a gun in Dunblane, killing all those kids in Scotland. People like Martin Bryant, who went crazy with a gun, killed something like 35 people in Port Arthur, Tasmania. And it's interesting, when you do the research, this mind control network is centered, here we go, in London at a place called the Tavistock Institute and its network of offshoots. It was created by a guy called John Rawlings Rees out of the British military's Psychological Warfare Department, and it set out to create an absolute explosion of mind-controlled people, which it could use to advance its agenda. Interestingly, Martin Bryant, one example, the guy that went crazy with a gun in Port Arthur, he was given psychological treatment, and his future treatment decided by a guy called Dr. Eric Cunningham Dax. Only the Tavistock Institute's Australia representative and a close associate for decades of John Rawlings Rees that set the whole thing up. When Timothy McVeigh was arrested for the Oklahoma bomb, USA Today reported, though not with the significance, that he'd been given a mental assessment after his arrest by a guy called Dr. Jolyon West. Louis Jolyon West. Louis Jolyon West, to anyone that's done any research into mind control in North America, is one of the most notorious CIA mind controllers operating out of the University of California. It was Louis Jolyon West who was designated to give a mental assessment to Patty Hearst, the newspaper heiress, when she came out of that Symbionese liberation terrorist group some years ago. This is how it's done. And we're watching a movie on the news of manipulation and manipulated mind-controlled people who are playing out a movie to get the reaction desired, which allows us to accept the agenda required. This is what's going on in front of our eyes, and this is why there's been so many efforts around the world to stop me standing here and saying it. Some of this brainwashing stuff and mind control stuff has actually gone even into the mainstream media more recently. This guy, Sirhan Sirhan, when you look at the research, and I've read his psychological profile and his psychological report, this guy was in an absolute friggin' trance when he's supposed to have shot Bobby Kennedy when he was going to be on the campaign to be president of the United States in the late 60s. He's still in jail now, Sirhan Sirhan. They create these people. Because if you can create a lone nutter, no conspiracy, the whole thing can be swept away. Lone nutter, ever so sad, terrible about John Lennon, wasn't it? Oh, JFK, what a terrible thing. Oh, Bobby Kennedy, what a terrible thing. Martin Luther King, oh my goodness, wasn't it terrible? And away you go. You don't start investigating who's really behind it when you've got a lone nutter who appears not to be the full picnic. Very famous people are involved in this stuff. This guy, Bob Hope, is a major slave owner, as they call them. He is, of course, he's getting well on in years now, so he's kind of being eased out of this. But through his life, he has been one of the people designated to look after and continue the abuse of mind-controlled slaves so the compartments hold and expand into more. This is the nature of what is going on in our world. And when we finish the next break, I'm going to go into the structure of what's happening today, how the day-to-day manipulation goes on, and then into what we can do about it. What can we do about it? A handful, almost literally at the top, of people can only control and manipulate 6 billion if we allow them to do it. It's time to stop. It's time to call enough. And we've got to get out of denial, and we've got to get out of our illusion that these things aren't happening. Because as Credo Mutwa said most brilliantly, while we ignore their happening, they just go on unchallenged. We have a wonderful opportunity here, our generations alive today, to leave this planet an immensely better place than the one we found. That's our gift. We've chosen to be here, and this is the time to do it. Thank you very much.